So, welcome back, everybody, to the Gazelle Podcast. We are delighted today to have an actual professional to talk to, somebody who really knows his stuff. And no, I don't mean Gary Brotherton, although Gary knows his stuff as well. But no, we are delighted to be joined today by industry legend in the payroll umbrella world and friend of Gazelle, Joe Taffurelli. So, Joe, welcome to the Gazelle Podcast.
Cheers, guys. It sounds a little bit like an obituary at the start, I'm not going to lie, but I'm not dead yet.
That's a nice thing I want to say about you. So, but I'm sure everyone will be in awe once you've opened your mouth a few times. So, we've got some really exciting questions for you today, Joe, to be fair. So, there's a lot going on in your world, and I think this is probably the point where I move over to Gary B, who knows far more about it.
That's quick.
to talk about it. No, we'll have a very nice conversation. But Gary's been writing down some serious questions, Joe. So let's do some easy ones first of all. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and you, obviously you've moved jobs recently. You've been a previous client of Gary's and known each other for a number of years. But tell us a bit about what it is that you do in the world.
Yeah, so I've been working in the world of umbrella payroll, CIS, for come up to 15 years. Cut my teeth and spent nearly all that time at Liquid Friday as COO there. And yeah, had an absolutely amazing time with the team. But my background has always been, whether it's managing customer service sort of functions and people, all the way up through to, like I said, the last few years where I have been looking after Friday's growth, with the help obviously of an amazing team there, and then we've looked after contractors really for the last 10 to 15 years and seen the industry change, I think would be a fair way to put it. It's definitely on a journey, and it's about to go through another chapter now. My background is very much around operations. It's around legislation, and it's around just building, awesome solutions for our clients.
Fantastic.
So right, so it's over to me then. So we get to talk about the fun subject of umbrella tax regulation. So of course, loads going on at the moment. It seems like there's another kind of story coming out every week, but I thought it'd be useful first if we take a bit of a step back. So of course, I'm finding at the moment that whilst in the umbrella world is what we've been talking about for quite a long time, outside of that, it's now coming onto other people's radar. So I just wanted to kind of take a step back initially and just really kind of let people know what's happened so far, where it started, why it's happening, and why the government want to do this.
Yeah, I mean, Christ, it depends how far back you want to go, mate, to be honest with you. But this really all stems all the way back to the old MSC legislation, which was way before my time, all the way up through to R35, which is everyone's favourite pieces of legislation, I suppose. And then there's always been an umbrella industry, but it's probably always been very much in the shadows, and kept behind recruitment agencies. So it wasn't necessarily particularly known as a separate industry. We were just payroll. Obviously, what happened due to R35 is there was a huge explosion into the umbrella market. I think most umbrella providers doubled or tripled in size in 4 weeks. So ultimately, we become just a larger entity. So from my understanding, there's around 800,000 contractors now that operate within umbrella. Unfortunately, there's still no legal definition of what an umbrella company is, so that's fun. Whilst we've worked with HMRC, we've worked with Department of Business and Trade, we've worked with the Agency Inspectorate to try and create one. There really isn't a successful definition yet. There is obviously in the current legislation, but it's written very broadly at the moment, which I'm sure we'll probably come onto later. But yeah, the legislation that we're facing at the moment around the tax, and you're right to differentiate the two, because there's tax reform, which is happening in April. That's slam dunk. It's in the finance bill. And then we have the umbrella regulations, which will happen, I probably imagine 27, to be honest with you, 2027. And that's where we actually regulate the industry. At the moment, the tax reform is taking precedent because it's felt at government that that's the most important problem to resolve, that they believe there could be a loss to the exchequer through, dodgy umbrella schemes and offshore schemes and that sort of stuff. I think it's up for debate whether this legislation would actually tackle that. But in effect, this April, there's joint and several liability that's going to affect the entire supply chain. And the reason, as I say, is because the government, there's been lots of relatively high profile cases of losses, and offshore particularly is kind of out there. And there's lots of, and you probably see this, Gary, I know me and you have moaned about this over the last decade of knowing each other. There's lots of schemes out there that are just called umbrella by the press, and they're not. They are flat out tax avoidance offshore schemes. So there is a little bit of a misnomer in that, when you talk about umbrella to the people that know the industry, there are definitely two ends of the scale. You've got the compliant umbrella market, which obviously where I've sat for the last decade plus, and then you've got the dodgy schemes.
Yeah.
And that's
you mentioned a very interesting phrase in there. It's a phrase I've heard a lot recently, and when I first kind of heard it recently, it was a phrase I hadn't heard in years. I think it went back to when I used to do my insurance exams. So my ears kind of pricked up, that joint and several liability. So what does that mean for people?
So the way that I've been explaining it is, and please by no means am I a lawyer or from the sins, I suppose. Maybe I should have been. But what it means in reality is that from April, the tax and national insurance that's due, for example, down the supply chain, including employers, national insurance, etc., is now from day one the responsibility, if it's a standard umbrella supply chain, of both the recruitment agency and the umbrella company at the same time. What it doesn't mean is that you're both operating it. It means that you're both legally liable for it from day one. So where we've actually got to, thank God, and HMRC have confirmed this, is that if you're working through a company like mine or a compliant umbrella provider, and they successfully pay over all the national insurance and the tax, it's business as usual. Where it's going to really affect you is if you are using, or there is an offshore scheme, or there is, unfortunately there has been some, there's been 2 or 3 failures in the umbrella market in the last month that have left money owing to HMRC. Well, from April, they will just go up to supply chain now and say, Mr. Agency, XYZ Umbrella Limited has not remitted the correct tax and national insurance. Can you please pay it? And they don't have to go through third-party debt transfer laws or any of those sort of really difficult hoops that HMRC have traditionally had to jump through, because from day one, you're liable for it anyway.
Yeah, well, that's one bit that's been really interesting in that the focus is so much on payslip auditing, which of course is very important. But you touched on there as well that if an umbrella company goes bankrupt and they owe the tax, then still the recruiter will be liable for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've been banging this drum, I probably should have said in the intro, obviously I was quite closely linked and worked a lot with the FCSA during its inception over the last 10 years. And I've always really beat the drum of, okay, yes, you've got to have the compliance of the pay slip. Yes, you've got to have the compliance. You've got to have a strong balance sheet. Like your umbrella provider needs to have a stronger balance sheet than you have, if you're an agency. And when I used to look back at all the audits I've sat in over the last, 15 years of doing this, I can honestly tell you, there's only one recruiter in all those years that I've ever asked to even see our balance sheet. Yeah. And that's insane to me. You're giving us tens of millions of pounds of cash and just hoping that we pay it. Like it feels insane. So yeah, the payslip checking tools that are out there are brilliant in that they'll pick up on skimming and things like that that's happened in the past in the industry, and it'll pick up on maybe just errors. Like software isn't perfect, so I've definitely known it help aid improve processes, but there's not many out there. In fact, there's only one that I know of that actually goes all the way through to make sure that the umbrella has actually remitted the correct money to HMRC. So you actually go and have to show your bank transactions that match up with your RTI, that match up with your payslips. Not many people do that sort of check, and so there's only one that I'm aware of.
Yeah. And you mentioned there, like we both talked about payslip auditing. I think you've got some news there as well, have you, Joe?
Yeah. So that one we're talking about is SafeRec, and you know, Seb. Everyone knows. I think anyone in our industry is now aware of SafeRec. So yeah, Pulse is at the point where it's now just waiting for that final certificate. But we have been through the audit and been confirmed that we are accredited. Basically, we're just waiting for that final bit of paper from Seb, which I am messaging him on probably an hourly basis now, asking for. But yeah, I'm really pleased, and you know, it took a long time, you know, coming out of the FCSA bubble, which is what I was very much in at Liquid Friday in my past. It was actually very eye-opening to see what other providers deliver outside the FCSA, and you know, it's not a rubbishing of the FCSA. I'm still truly believe in what it's meant to be there for and what it does. I was just you know, blown away really by the breadth of SafeRec's sort of in-depth deep dive it does on a monthly basis, whereas you know, that's very challenging for an entity like FCSA to do, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think it kind of gives you both angles that we've talked about. You've got the payslip auditing there, but being part of the Indigo group means you've got the balance sheet there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're, you know, I've joined Pulse. What was it now? Maybe 6 to 8 weeks ago, as CEO, and we're going through a journey at the moment. So people may already know the brand FRS, which is a umbrella provider. So we're taking FRS and developing that into Pulse, which is built for what's coming, and I think that's what's really important. It is, you know, it's not just an umbrella. Obviously payroll, we can handle that. We can handle CIS, we can handle sole trader stuff, we can handle engagement of umbrella, but ultimately we're a tech first compliance platform that is and will be integrated with SafeRec, to really give a full supply chain exposure really to what we do. I think that's the only way these reforms are going to work in the industry, is that we all open up our books literally and say, have a look whenever you want. And yeah, that's something that I was quite strong on when I took this role, is that I wanted to build something for what was coming in April, and then ready for umbrella reform in 26-27.
Fantastic. Now, bringing the conversation back to what's happened recently, of course, we've got the draft legislation, and there's a kind of interesting piece of that that I think people have noticed recently, whereby when there's no umbrella in the chain, the recruitment company essentially becomes the umbrella for the purposes of the legislation. Are you able to talk a bit about the impact of that?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, so I didn't pick up on that directly myself either. I think that was a nuance. It was picked up by Rebecca Seeley Harris, who, if people don't know, she is a kind of oracle of all things payroll intermediaries and IR35, and absolutely an amazing person. And I was having a conversation with her, and I saw it picked up in one of her articles. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I put a piece. I just shared that on my LinkedIn last week, and I had to put my phone away. It kind of blew up a little bit, so it got to like 15,500 kind of interactions with it, and I was like, "This is insane." And I apologized to Rebecca because she was tagged in it. But yeah, no, you are all right. What HMRC have confirmed is that if there isn't a genuine umbrella, you know, in that supply chain, obviously interesting to know how we're going to define that. But if there isn't one, then they will assume that basically the recruiter is an umbrella. And that means that their client is joint and severally liable for the tax. So we're in this weird situation, which means that, you know, if there is a genuine umbrella company in the supply chain, then that breaks that link, you know, to the client, and it actually is safer for the client to have an umbrella in the supply chain. So when asked and challenged, HMRC have confirmed it. They've said it isn't an unintended consequence. They were aware of it. I, read into that what you will, but it does mean that ultimately they've locked up the supply chain now with this joint and several liability, whether there's an umbrella on or not, and I think that's quite interesting.
And as you kind of implied there, it's really interesting that we've gone full circle, haven't we? So it wasn't so long ago that people were concerned about the future of the umbrella industry. Mm-hmm. Now we've got the government actually putting bits into legislation that secures the future of it, but actually they want the umbrellas there. They like the kind of the value that their kind of bank their balance sheet brings.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're, I've worked with HMRC directly and indirectly a lot over the years. There's lots of conversations I had with the policy team, and that they try to really understand the nuances of our industry, and they've always approached companies like Liquid Friday, and me personally, and people like Rebecca and the FCSA, to kind of, okay, we need to understand this umbrella market and the compliant end of the market, and how do we protect it actually is something that they were quite hot on. And when I kind of pushed them on that, like, well, why? Because obviously there's all this negativity in the press, and you're putting out the operations team put out on LinkedIn kind of paid ads against umbrella or perceived umbrella, and it's because policy and Treasury have worked out we're really, really good at bringing in huge amounts of tax. Because I think arguably, if you looked at the R35 reforms and how that was handled, I think without the umbrella industry backing it up and giving a solution, you would have seen thousands of more people going self-employed, sole trader, incorrectly, completely misclassification, and I think they've clocked onto that in Treasury. I know the agency inspectorate have got a good working relationship with decent umbrellas, and they know that we are actually there to be that middleman and to navigate all these really complex reforms that happen almost every 2 or 3 years. There's probably something big. So that they like that. They like the fact that they can go to a body like the FCSA, or they can go to someone like SafeRec, or they can go to the, really there's only 3 or 4 kind of payroll umbrella software providers. They can go to those entities and have meaningful conversations and probably access a cohort of 500 to 800,000 workers. So that's why I think they've done it. That's why I think that they recognize there's a need, and they even put that in their response, that they're overall, the majority of providers are compliant. And that's why they're, saying, well, if you're going to go offshore, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, Mr. Recruitment Agency or any type of, or platform that uses labor. Well, actually you should have an umbrella in that supply chain to de-risk it. And that's a massive leap from where we were a decade ago with them removing TNS. And I mean, I don't know how many times I've been told my industry is dying, and it's just got bigger.
Well, that's the thing. There's been occasions in the last year where I've been talking to people, sometimes insurance companies, and they've kind of said, oh, it's irrelevant. They won't exist soon. Like, well, that's a bit hasty, but as you say, we've gone full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's such a, we always see regularly focus on the tax, right? Because that's what's in the press, and you get those dodgy cases, and you got the loan scheme, which was abhorrent and exploitative. They weren't umbrella companies. Like, people need to understand they were not umbrella companies. What a good umbrella company does is make sure you're correctly classified for tax purposes, make sure that you're actually given all of your employment rights if you are an employee, and actually supports. There's still this misconception that we exploit, and I can tell you for a fact we don't. If the industry did, A, there'd be a lot more money in it, and B, you'd see a lot more negativity in the market, and there just isn't. You look online and you look at reviews of umbrella companies, they're overwhelmingly positive. Of course, there's issues that arise, as in any service sector, but overwhelmingly people like working within umbrella. And if they don't, it's a choice. Don't. No one, I don't think I've ever forced anybody to take a payroll from me. I don't know I would. Just don't do it. Don't, if you want to go internal POA with the agency, go for it. If you want an outside of our 35 assignment with a limited company, go and find them. It is, they are out there. It is possible. No one's forcing anybody. into any type of schemes that I've been aware of.
One final question on the reforms for any recruiters watching the podcast. Of course, this is coming in April. What do they need to start doing now?
Just reviewing. I'm speaking constantly to agencies. Having a PSL is fantastic, and you're probably on your way to compliance. I think limiting that PSL is important. Like I don't know about you guys, but I don't have 14 different stationery providers, or I don't have 14 insurance companies that look after me. I have one. And I get that maybe you don't want one umbrella, and I kind of get that, particularly if you're a larger entity and you want to spread the risk. Fine, get that. But make sure it's a kind of small PSL. Make sure it's manageable. Make sure you're going out and auditing. As I say, in all the years that I was been in the industry, I've probably had less than 5 agencies come in and actually sit in the building and audit us. Most of them just send the same questionnaire, and we fill it out, and we send it back, and we never hear from them. So it's, you need to get under the skin. You need to understand your workforce provider, your umbrella, your whoever you're using. And then it is just demanding that level of service. Like, are they SafeRec accredited? Are they actually compliant? What third party is auditing them? Are they being audited at all? So that's important. Realizing the value of the supply chain as well. You're starting to see that a lot more, particularly larger 8 recruiters. They're starting to seriously understand that, it's impossible for a decent umbrella or payroll or workforce intermediary provider, whatever we want to call ourselves now, to do this job. And then you ask for a £15 rebate out of our £20 margin, or you ask for us to deliver, I don't know, weird and wonderful things that we've been asked for in the past. So we've probably done a whole podcast on just how many times I've been asked to fit out a kitchen. There's like so many things that just aren't possible in the future. For us to do what we do compliantly and to do it effectively and seamlessly, it costs money. And I think, looking at that supply chain, where I think historically people have just gone, you've got a badge, whether that's professional passport, FCSA, and the commercials work, and that's as far as it's gone. That doesn't work anymore. You need to seriously partner with somebody and make sure you're confident, because you are giving us, and I always say this, 10 million quid. Some of our clients, like, do you want to pop in and see the team, maybe, or say hello to someone, or all those kind of things that you think, God, I wanted to go see you. I go and see you every year. I don't give you 10 million quid. But it's important that they know the supply chain's changing, it's growing up, and it's developing into something else that's bigger than what it was.
Okay, now earlier you mentioned employment reforms, saying new ones still along every 2 to 3 years. Now, of course, at the moment, we've got the Employment Rights Bill, which is pretty kind of wide and sweeping when you look at it. The kind of 28 areas of focus. What do you think are the kind of key takeaways from it that people need to be looking at?
I don't know if we can swear on this, but it's really bad. It's not in a good place, I think, for the employment businesses and recruitment agencies and temporary labour. It's not built for us. As usual, we're going to be an unintended consequence of legislation. Now, key things to take away if I was a recruiter, I would say, you need to listen to whatever industry body you're part of, whether it's REC or team, because they are, or APSCO, they are really working hard with government to try and get clarification on what's coming and when it's coming. And okay, well, that does not physically work in our space. Like, what do you think we should do? So I would say, stick very close to them. And then you've got the kind of big things that are coming up. So the big things that worry me would be right to guaranteed hours. For example, that's a huge problem for recruiters. They've never had to do that before. They don't understand it. They don't get it. When I talk to people and they say, but they're a temp, and you're like, yeah, cool. Law doesn't matter. There is no temp in law. They are, if they've been working for you for a period of time, at the way it looks at the moment, although we haven't seen the legislation exactly, you're going to have to guarantee them over a reference period, whatever you've been paying them for the last, 12 weeks, for example. So that's really interesting. I think there's some stuff that I would be very concerned around holiday pay still is a major problem in our sector, or say our sector, the employment business sort of recruitment agency sector is a major hot potato in that, is it being handled correctly? Is it being accrued correctly? And is it being paid out? That's important. And then just the legislation stuff around, we're just exposed a lot more to things from day one now. So there's going to be this initial employment period, which to the layman is just another probation period, I suppose. But I suppose to the lawyers, it's really not a probation period. We can't do what we've been able to do over the last, I can't remember, decade plus, where, you know, in the first 2 years of someone's employment, we have the right as an employer to say, I'm really sorry, it hasn't worked out. And then it's done. Like, it just ends, like, as long as you obviously pay the notice period and stuff, but it just ends. That's not going to be the case moving forward. So we're only going to think I have between 6 and 9 months, but no one's quite sure yet either, for that period, for that action to take. And then it's going to be, well, how do I fix it? Right? Because agencies need to know how to fix this stuff. So it could be, no one knows because no one's seen the detailed legislation yet. It could be actually the silver bullet is umbrella. Because we take all that risk away from you, just by virtue of being the employer. But B, we already offer guaranteed hours, and that is probably not known by agencies. So standard umbrella contracts offer guaranteed hours right now. We don't offer 0-hour contracts. We don't offer contract for services. We offer overarching contracts of employment, which is exactly what this legislation is asking employers to deliver. So actually, if you've got a decent umbrella, they are your silver bullet. So you will probably not really want to offer an internal PAYE, I imagine, and you'll much rather send over everything to an umbrella company, and that makes perfect sense to me. And I think, you know, that is kind of why this umbrella, you know, and it's why we exist, right? We're here to de-risk and add value, and this is the ultimate de-risking, is that we say, well, that employment rights stuff, it's kind of not your problem. Like, we're gonna need to work together on it because we're a cohesive supply chain, but it's actually our problem legally. We're gonna need to have support from you, but ultimately we can de-risk you. We're not sure whether that's going to be true exactly on every single piece of this because no one's written the legislation yet. So until we see it in black and white, we can't sit here and I say, yeah, don't worry, Mr. Agency, just give me everyone that's employed and you will never have to worry about it again. It's a strong possibility. I'd probably say 70 to 80% possible that is going to be the silver bullet, but ultimately I can't sit here and guarantee, and anyone that does is lying, I suppose, is the way to put it. So I know there's a lot of people in my space that are really excited with the fact that we're probably going to be the silver bullet, but we don't know yet. And I'm always much more honest, I think, and we probably are, but I don't think we definitely are.
Well, you mentioned that we don't have the legislation yet. What kind of timescales are we looking at?
They've put out a roadmap. Some stuff will be coming in really, really quickly, and that's around things around like the tribunal service and the kind of deadlines for that, and extending how long people have to take you to tribunal. All that's quite easy to change, so they're changing that quite quickly. But things like right to guaranteed hours, etc., that's going to be, they understand that is more difficult to deliver. And I don't know the exact time frame off the top of my head, but I know that that's going to be definitely 26, 27,
right? Okay.
And moving all the way up to 2028, I think.
Yeah, so again, I mean, like, touching back on the tax reforms, there's just so much for people to be thinking about right now, isn't there?
Yeah, it's generational, I think, from what I understand, you know, from people in the industry that have been in either employment lawyers that have been in the industry for 30, 40 years. They're saying this is bigger than what Labour did back in Tony Blair's days when they brought in most of the Employment Rights Act, you know, back then. This is definitely bigger and more wide-reaching, and where they're making it primary legislation, it also then makes it really difficult for like future governments to unpick it. So this is being baked in. This is going to be in the business DNA of the UK forever now. I can't see, things might get moved around, and, you know, deadlines might be moved, and they might say, oh, instead of, you know, go back to giving us 2 years where we can kind of make decisions as employers, or they won't, but they could. But at the moment, yeah, if it's primary legislation, it's going to require primary legislation to sort of write it out. And I don't see any political party in the future probably doing that.
Yeah. I suppose if anyone's got any questions, you want them on to call, are you? Or is your phone still hit?
Yeah, or link in with me. Yeah. You'll probably see that LinkedIn post. But yeah, feel free to link in with me or talk to you. You've got my number. And yeah, I'm more than happy to have a chat with anybody and help them guide, what that is, what should their PSL look like if they are an agency, what's the balance that you want to get, is it 3 providers, 4 providers, 2, what works best. But yeah, I think really we've got maybe another few weeks of reprieve where people can focus on having a nice summer, holidays. But then once we're back in kind of September, October, it's going to be April really quickly. And if you've got to move a book from, let's say you go in, you do an audit, and you've got 400 lads with a provider, and you're actually you're not comfortable with them. Well, that's going to take you 3 months to work your way out of that, unless you're doing like a book 2P transfer. But so yeah, it's going to be tough. And I would say don't bury your head in the sand. We don't want to go through an IR35 again, where umbrella providers are trying to onboard 4,000 contractors in 2 days. Like it's challenging.
There's a chance his podcast won't be going out till September, Joe. So
yeah, good. Well, that's fine. Everyone have their holidays in.
Give you a call. Listen, I think we've thrown some fantastic questions at you. I've got to be honest, you've made Gary sound quite intelligent today with some of the questions.
Intelligent man.
There you go. Thank you, Joe.
No, it's been really fascinating listening, to be fair, and been involved in this and what you're doing. And I think you've done a remarkable job, given that you've not mentioned once Gary's socks. Which,
if I could turn back the clock,
it's the one on the stripe,
Yeah, Gary's socks were a bad choice for podcasting today, unfortunately.
I mean, almost as good as me choosing a prison cell.
Well, yeah, we were going to mention that you're actually locked up in
yeah, it's a little bit
El Salvador at the minute or something, isn't it?
It does feel a bit grim in here, not going to lie.
But no, seriously, Gary, I'm sure you might have some more intelligent questions to ask, but we'll have to do it on another podcast because we've there's so much going on in your world, which actually so much going on in the world of business, as you say, and you rightly explained there. These things are not just hidden away over there in that umbrella world. It has a knock-on effect to employers and to businesses, along the way. So look, fascinating. Really, really, really appreciate you coming on and spending the time, and especially at such a busy time, Joe. So
no worries.
Yeah, look, I should have added at the beginning Sage as well as friend of Gazelle and rockstar in the industry. So really appreciate your time, mate.
Thank you, Joe.
Very much, and we'll speak
Cheers.
again soon.